Today, I have the distinct pleasure of introducing you to Colin Clemitson. Colin is an amazing gentleman because he has owned 6 businesses in his past, all I think somewhat different, but my goodness, what we can learn from his experiences within those businesses is just going to be huge. And so with that, I would like to welcome you, Colin, for joining me today to learn a little bit more about your past as well as your present.
Hi, Nana. Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
Oh, it's so great to know you and speak to you. So let's start at the beginning. What was the first business you owned?
Well, it was interesting because I immigrated to the US in 1987, my wife and my two daughters and myself. And at that stage, I was in commercial real estate in South Africa, where I'd come from. And I joined a company here and was a general manager for the local commercial brokerage branch for about 2 years, and the company got bought out. And I thought, well, you know, I'm tired of corporate life. I've had about 15, 17 years of it. It's been good, but it's also, I'm not my own person. So I thought I'm going to start my own business. And I thought, well, I've got a real estate broker's license and I like finance, so I'll go into mortgages. Now, I knew a little bit about mortgages, not a heck of a lot. So I went to work initially for a friend of mine for about 4 or 5 months who was in the mortgage business, and I learned a lot, and he was quite aware of what I was doing. And then I started my own mortgage company. And at that stage, it was in residential, because that was the bigger market, as it were. Soon found that was not necessarily a good move, but at that time, it sounded pretty good. So I went into residential.
So you hired people within the mortgage business, right?
Yes. The first thing I had to hire was somebody who could actually process the loans. So I got to process that would help. And I took on 2 salespeople. And having spent a lot of years in sales, you know, I knew sort of the kind of people I was looking for. And I wasn't worried about their ability in mortgages. It was more the ability to get on with people, to network, things like that. So that business came along very well. And it got to a stage where, unfortunately, from my perspective anyhow, there was so much competition, and the price of or the commission one could make was gradually diminishing as people would constantly undercut the rates, and everybody knew the rates. They were all very obvious. So I started to look around, kept the business, but one of the salespeople that I had was extremely good. And I said to him, look, you know, if you want to take this over and run it, I'll cut you in for a bit of the profits and so on. And he said, absolutely fine. And off he did. So I sort of backed away from that. And I began to look for, I love the mortgage business. It's a fascinating, interesting business. And I looked for where I could see the biggest gap. And to me at that time, the biggest gap was in small commercial loans, where people owned either a commercial business of their own. The loan would be less than $2 million. And there was a market there because big banks and big institutions did a $2 million loan was a joke. You know, they were after the 10, 15, $20 million loans. So they weren't really interested. Number 2, the credit of these people was not exactly perfect. Right. You know, they were using their own personal credit, sometimes in the business and so on and so forth. So I found several lenders throughout the US who dealt in, at that time it was called subprime or less than perfect kind of credit, and who loved loans that were less than $2 million.
Right.
But that was a very good lesson to me in one thing, Nana, and that was to niche your market down. The residential mortgage was too wide. It was anybody who wanted a house kind of thing, or anybody wanted a loan. Right. Yeah, it was a specific person who had a specific problem. And so that worked extremely well. And we built that business up again very nicely. The salespeople, most of the people that I took on were salespeople. And again, the same thing applied. I looked mainly for their ability to sell and to engage with people than to know. I could teach them the ins and outs of the product, but it was way more important that they were not scared to pick up a phone. And it's quite amazing how many people will pick up a phone, and by the time it comes off the cradle to their ear, it goes from £500 to 75,000 pounds.
That's funny.
It becomes impossible.
Nobody likes to do cold calls.
No. But in those days, phone calls were a big thing. Not so much today.
Yeah.
So that went very well. And unfortunately, I have a habit of when things are going well, to kind of sit back and say, well, now, what else? And so again, I did something similar in the sense that there was, at this time, was a lady. She was as smart as a whip. And I said, look, same sort of deal. Would you like to not only be the manager, but have a share in the thing? And she jumped at it, and off that went.
Wow.
So I kept a finger in everything, of course. But then I thought, well, now here's another thing I should look at, which was equipment leasing. Because again, it was finance. And again, many of the operators of heavy duty equipment are not, their credit's not perfect either. And again, they use a lot of their own credit in the business that they're running. So they would go along to a dealership and want to buy a John Deere tractor or a Cat or whatever it might have been. And because their credit wasn't up to much, many of them would have been turned down. Right. So again, we started that market. And again, it was niched down to people who had credit problems but wanted the machinery, couldn't afford to buy it, but could afford to lease it.
Was this in one state, or was this?
We generally tended to keep it to the West, in the sense that one had to be reasonably close to the situation. So it was mainly sort of California, Nevada, a little bit of Oregon. But mainly it was wherever the lenders or the lessors would do the leases.
I see.
In the West. And then following that, there was a complete change. A very good friend of mine that I had known for many years came to me and said, look, I've got this great idea. I want to build little English cottages. She was an English woman, and I have an English background. And she said, I want to build some cute little English cottages. And I'm going to build, she lived in Nevada City. And she said, I want to build these in the Nevada City, Auburn, Grass Valley area. And I said, I think it's a great idea. And we looked at the market and we said, well, this would only really suit a young couple or a couple with a baby, but not a couple with children, or an elderly couple or a single person. So we started off building one or two of these. We got the finance, we started to build them. And we were, it was great on paper, but we said, will this thing work? And it did. It worked very well. So she was also a realtor, so that helped. So she did the selling. And that was a nice business. It developed very well.
So what exactly is an English cottage?
Well, it's essentially a one, or at the most a 1.5 bedroom, but the majority we built was a 1 bedroom with a large sort of call it a do-all room, a family room, a sewing room, a playroom, a nursery, any darn thing you wanted. And that was upstairs. That was the whole of the upstairs was this room. And the downstairs was the bedroom, the bathroom, kitchen, and that was about it. These were only about, 800 to 900 square feet. They were small.
Oh my gosh, they're sort of like the precursor to the, what is it, the she shack or what else?
Or I think they call it the mini something nowadays.
Yeah.
But it worked very well. It however, was a small business. It was something that we built 1 or 2 at a time and sold them. So eventually, I said, I think it's great, but I'd like to go back to something a bit more exciting. So she took the whole thing over and, so to speak, bought me out. And that was fine, and off it went. So that was that one. Let me think what, then I went back into the finance business and, or not back into it, I never left it, but, and I thought, well, now the next place to look at is business owners who need capital, working capital. And again, the niche market was people could obviously walk into a bank and get working capital. That's not a big deal. Right. But if your credit's not perfect, then that's not so easy. Yes. So I looked for lenders who would do that, and there were a few out there who were quite happy to do that. And I took their parameters and started to sell, to market to those people who fitted the category. And that worked extremely well again, because not because I was a smart guy, but because I had learned the one thing I think which is very important is to niche something down to where you are one of the few players in town where the client is more interested in getting the product or the service or whatever it is you're selling versus fighting you on price.
Right.
So that's that one, and I think I'm missing one. Oh, yeah. The other one was not a joke by any means, but it was funny because it was so far out to left field for me. But I had another friend, and she and her husband were brokers for women's clothing that they got from manufacturers, which was like last year's model, if that's the right terminology.
Oh, yeah.
And the big stores didn't want them, and they were sitting with thousands and thousands of these items. So this friend of mine and her husband, they used to buy these things, or if they first couldn't buy them, they would go and find somebody to buy them and take a small commission by tying up the manufacturer and the client. And they said, look, we'd like to go a step further. Would you finance us buying this stuff and then we sell it? So I thought, you know what, let's see what happens. So we did it, and they knew the business. I knew nothing about this business. All I did was provide the money, and they did the work. They had the contacts, and it actually was a fun little business because there wasn't a fortune in it, but there was good money in it. And after, I think it was about 18 months, the husband decided for whatever reason that they wanted to go and live in Arizona. And they kind of, so I said, well, look, don't worry about it. It was a fun experience, really. So,
wow.
I went back to what I knew best, which is stick around in the finance world.
My goodness.
That's what I did then until I retired. And then when I retired, I got very bored because, as I was telling you earlier, retirement, you think it's going to be this wonderful thing, but it's great, except it's as boring as heck. My wife and I travel every year anyhow. So, it's no use saying, oh, well, let's go travel. We were traveling anyhow.
Right.
And I played a bit of golf, but I used to play a bit of golf anyhow. So there was nothing really magic about it, except there were no people, there was no challenge, there was no anything to keep my mind going. So I thought, well, heck, I've got to get back into something. And I didn't really know what. I didn't want to go into anything that was a full-time business, sort of, as I'd call it, a brick and mortar business, staff, rentals, all that stuff, which was fine. But I thought I'm over that now. So I thought I want to do something from I've got a nice office at home. I'll do something from home, as is very common nowadays. But what? And one evening over dinner, my wife said, you know what, you've had a whole bunch of businesses, and one of the problems you've always had is, number one, finding clients, and number two, finding enough people to sell to those clients. So she said, why don't you find small business owners who've got a similar problem and show them what you did? Because one thing I omitted to mention was, as we went through each business, I realized, at that stage, I had an outstanding personal assistant, if you'd like to call it that. But she was what we used to call in the UK area a girl Friday. There was nothing she couldn't do. I mean, it didn't matter what it was, she could handle it. So she very wisely said to me, let's keep a record of everything we're doing in the form of marketing, in the form of selling, so that we can apply it to the next business or to a branch or whatever it may be. So she opened up a record book, so to speak, and she kept records of everything that we did. And from that, I was able to develop a system, which meant that when we started a business, it wasn't a case of ice cold. It was a case of saying, this is how this works. Now, all we got to do is tune this or fine tune it to the wants of this particular industry, but the principle works. So having done that, then it gave us a base to launch the sales, gave the salesmen something to get their teeth into, and go from there. So that's about it.
So now you're helping people who want to own their own business.
Right. Now I'm looking to coach and to mentor business owners who find that they've got a business. It's a nice business. They're working like a dog in the business, which is one of the things that happens to every business owner.
Right.
The business kind of eventually becomes, it owns you sometimes if you're not very careful. But they're in a situation where they're working hard. They've reached some sort of plateau, and they need more clients, because we all know that new clients are the lifeblood of any business, doesn't matter what. And if that flow slows down or even stops, you have a totally erratic cash flow. And you can't live on a totally erratic cash flow. You either have to feed it from your own assets or capital or whatever it is. And then if the payments become late and all kinds of things, your credit goes to heck. So it's a vital part of the whole thing. And many business owners know their product, they know their business, they know what they're doing extremely well, but they're not necessarily strong on the marketing side. So that's where I like to try and help them.
Yeah, so I mean, I know that often doctors and people like that are so busy helping people physically have absolutely no time to invest in the marketing of their businesses. Yeah.
That's right. Yeah.
So
And
will
then
you niche that down even further, or do you think you'll just keep it where it is?
Well, this is what I'm thinking, and this is what's going to happen, I think. I'm thinking I'm going to keep it small and just do it, myself, and with maybe, I have an excellent assistant right now who is really good at marketing, amongst other things. And so I thought, well, I'll just keep it to her and me, and that'll be it. In my heart, I know that's not going to happen.
Yeah, you'll probably have branches all over.
What's going to happen is we're going to I think I'll just take on one salesperson to help a bit, another health salesperson, and before I know it, it'll probably be. I want to be careful, because I don't really want to go and really push and grow this thing to a decent sized business. I'd rather just keep it controllable. So
with all the things that you've done, is there certain skills that you feel people would benefit from if they possess those skills, regardless of the fields they want to go into?
Yeah, the skills, I think, are, first of all, I think no matter what business you're in, you need people skills. Because every business, the word salesman is because of people like the order malls and that kind of thing. Salesman doesn't have a great connotation. But in fact, we're all salesmen. We're all salespeople. We sell every time. You sell at home, you sell to your family, you sell your ideas. You're always selling something. So I think the idea of sales and the idea of using sales and marketing to generate income is obviously the only way to go. There's no other way of generating income that I know of, other than stealing it or something. But a few guys have tried that. But what I'd say is certainly people skills. And secondly, to get a knowledge, not an expertise, not to become a genius at marketing, but to have a lot of knowledge about marketing in specifics about who your target market is. Because I learned that earlier, as I explained, that if your market is too big, you're basically marketing to everybody and selling to nobody. But if your market is niched down, you become an expert in that area, you become well known, and people come to you versus you going to them. That's the ultimate goal. So I would say one should, look at the market, decide really what. A lot of people, when I say to them, who do you sell to? They're pretty vague. Well, we sell to people who want this. Well, yes and no. There's a lot of, but why do they want that? What are the reasons they want to buy it? What are the concerns and problems they've got? Because you need to address those things in order to begin to niche your market down and to become heard. Because there's so much noise out there today that to become heard alone is a really big step. Yeah, you're singing to the choir, because when I work with people and they're wanting to go into an industry to get a job, I'm all about, you got to know that industry inside and out. You need to know the company you're talking to as best as you can inside and out, which is the same thing, because then if you have the people skills, you can convey what you know in an interview and hopefully get the job that way. Right. Yeah. And just on that point, I spoke to somebody the other day, it was about a month ago, And they said, you know, I want to start my own business. And I said, that's a great idea. What do you want to do? He says, oh, I just want to make money.
Yeah, great.
You want to maybe rethink that.
Yeah. That isn't the truth, right?
Because number one, you're not going to make a lot of money initially. And number two, if that's the reason you're starting the business, to make money, I really don't want to be sort of a doomsayer, but you're going to fail. Because you have no why, no reason to help. The business has to serve, and somebody needs to have need that service that you can fill, that hole, that gap, whatever it may be. Then you'll start making money. But if the purpose is to make money, it ain't going to work.
And isn't it so great that you've had so many businesses and you have so much experience? I mean, it's absolutely a pro to hire somebody such as yourself, rather someone who's just out of business school and has a master's degree from Harvard in, you know, business development or whatever, because yes, they may be highly educated, but they haven't lived through everything you've lived through. So your bank of experience is invaluable.
Thank you. I think that's right, actually, because, you know, I've seen lots of watched and actually even bought a few courses from various coaches just to see what they teach, and a lot of it is theory. So you're right. You know, it's better to talk to somebody who's been there, done that, got bruised, got beaten down, because you know it's running a business is not an easy thing, and it's not always just a bed of roses and lollipops. This is, you can become very depressed, very down when things go wrong, and they go wrong for a reason. And one then needs to, you know, have the strength to sit back and say, I know I'm wrong. Yeah. What am I doing wrong, and how can I make this right? And have the guts to go out and talk to friends and say, tell me where you think I'm wrong, because I can't see it.
Absolutely, absolutely. So many people can't see beyond what they see.
I think everybody.
How can they know, right?
Yeah, how do you know? You know, it's like the forest for the trees. Once you're in it, you just can't see them. Yeah. But you know, on the other side, it's great. I mean, I could no more imagine working on a 9 to 5 for, no matter if the guy said you're going to have $1 million a month. Honestly, it would destroy me.
I understand that. Yeah. Well, you've been used to running the show for a long time.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, you are so wonderful. I really appreciate you talking with me.
Thank you.
If you would kindly just tell me and tell our audience where they can reach you if they want to get your help. Sure.
Name's Colin Clemitson. My phone number direct is 916 area code 300-9455. And if you need to email me, it's help, HELP, at grow, GROW, cash, CASH, flow, FLOW, help at grow, cash, flow.
Oh, I like that, help cash flow. Very clever.
Yeah, growing cash flow.
Help grow cash flow. That's right.
Help at grow cash flow. Yeah.
Yeah, very good. Well, thank you very much. Is there any other parting words you want to leave our audience with before we say goodbye?
No. It was a delight being here, and thank you for taking the time.
All right, my pleasure. Talk to you soon, Colin.
Okay. Bye-bye now.
Bye.
Bye.